Welcome to the Success Files with the Traveling Finance Marketer, your shortcut to mastering finance. We chat with top experts, revealing their stories, tips and tricks to boost your career. Join us in navigating the financial world and don't forget to subscribe. Let's dive into the Success Files.
So this episode is coming to you from an incredible viewpoint. Check that out. We have got Chris Bowman, who is a financial advisor helping entrepreneurs and those interested in real estate. It's going to be a great episode. Check it out. Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of the Success Files. On today's episode, we've got Chris Bowman. He is a financial advisor specializing in helping entrepreneurs and real estate investors. And he's got skin in the game himself with his own developments, and I'm really excited to talk about that. He's also got a fantastic personal brand on TikTok, marrying up humor with educational content as well. So looking forward to digging into that. Chris, welcome.
Ryan, appreciate it.
How was that intro? Was that all good?
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So, and appreciate you appreciating my humor, probably more so than what my kids do. So it's great.
No worries. There was one about, I can't remember the specific examples, one about walking in the rain. There was another one as well that really made me laugh. But yeah, it's really interesting what you do in terms of your personal brand. But let's jump into that a little bit later. Yeah. First of all, if you could just tell me a bit about your background and how you got into the industry, what you do, and all that sort of stuff. Let's set the scene.
Yeah, set the scene for it all. So I'm one of those where I didn't come right out of college going into becoming a financial advisor or even the financial industry. And I felt like, honestly, I used to tell some people one story, and it's really evolved over time. As a college graduate, I graduated in 2008, and I used to tell people, well, it was 2008, so a terrible time to go into the financial services industry. If I'm honest, though, I was a college graduate that had no idea what I wanted to do when I grow up. So at that point, spent a few years in the technical world and technical sales, and made the transition over time, realizing that I loved working together with people and the finance piece of it. And the reason why I didn't initially go into the financial world was because a lot of like really poor money scripts that I had. So from growing up in childhood, we can get into that if we want to, but my transition, I started with a large bank where I was in the banking industry, really realized that I loved working with people's money and had a really great mentor that mentored me into becoming a financial planner at that firm. And then over time, just really wanted to have my own voice. So moved to the independent space. But it's been a great journey for the last 10 plus years.
That's amazing, and I think you're absolutely right. The when you say about the lack of sort of financial awareness when you're growing up and when you're younger, to be honest, I don't think that's uncommon. In fact, I'd say that's the vast majority of people. And I always say that's one of the reasons why we start up our agency, because financial literacy is really difficult to come by, and right. I think that it's such a valuable thing that you guys provide. But yeah, tell me a bit more about that side of things.
Yeah. So if I'm looking at from the financial literacy side of things, going back to growing up, so I grew up in a family household that was two school educators. So my mom was a school counselor, my dad was a school psychologist. And so really that educator background. So it was really everybody in my family went to either work to become a teacher or education, superintendents, all of those different sorts of things. And there weren't a lot of people that went into the money space. And to be honest, every time that we were growing up, we were upper middle class. We did really fairly well. I never had to worry about money as a kid, but there was that next level that you would see from time to time. And there was those comments that you would hear growing up where, oh, these people have this because of that maybe they're a little stingy, or there's different words that were put out there that just get ingrained into your head. And I almost had it in my brain that money was a negative. So if those people that chased after gaining wealth for themselves were inherently selfish people. So I didn't want that. So I went to school knowing I wanted to go into business, and I went into business for marketing, because I thought I would be able to have more of that artistic background and really bring in that to the business world. While in college, I realized I loved the finance side of things. I loved talking with people about money, and personally got married relatively young. So we were in our early 20s, and had the 10-year plan of my wife and I both working. And then 3 months later, found out that we were having our first kid. So at 25, I was a sole income provider for our family, really having to work with a limited resource, but going from doing a budget from a limited mindset to looking at my budget and saying, what is it that I want to be able to achieve? It's not, let's try to cut our costs. Let's try to say, what is the goal for what we want to achieve with our lives to be able to live out that dream life? And it was through really a budgeting process that I really realized that there's that abundance mindset. There's a lot of opportunity within the world. And I just really wanted to be able to teach people that, to be able to take away from all of those negative scripts that people have in their brain, and be able to really enjoy, embrace their money, even when you have saved money, to not have the scarcity mindset, so that you can be able to provide for your family. So it was all of those things. And probably that psychologist counselor piece that my parents had really helped out, because I love the way looking at people think. But it's absolutely been a journey, melding those two worlds of business and the psychology side.
I bet, and it's really weird that the conversation around marketing, around money, is so taboo,
Right.
and it definitely seems like a large percentage of the people grow up with this aversion to actually talking about money and actually discussing it openly. And I think that if you don't have those conversations, then it's difficult to, like you say, to put yourself in that mindset. Where do you think that comes from? Why do you think it's such a taboo subject to speak about openly?
I feel like there's the idea of comparison. So not many people people think that their neighbor is always better off than what they are. And I always tell people that you look at others and you think that they have their life together, and everybody seems to have their life together until you get to know them. But it's one of those things that we look at the other person next door, and they have the nice car, they have a nice house. But there could be a million things that are going on. They might be drowning in credit card debt. Being in the banking world, that was one thing that I would see all the time. People would walk through the door and have this beautiful car in the parking lot, but be asking for a fee refund on their account. And you have somebody else that comes in with a wrinkled t-shirt, and he might be the guy that has $1 million sitting in cash, with 4 or 5 different rental properties that he's going around to manage. So it's a number that not a lot of people will see, and they just get so nervous about their own personal story with money that they become afraid to openly discuss it with others.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw a Dave Ramsey video on TikTok where he was talking to a couple. I think they were in their early 30s, and he said, "What's your situation?" They said, "We're $1 million in debt." So he said, "Okay, let's break it down." And they had, a big car on finance, like 100 grand's worth of car,
Mm-hmm.
$250,000 dollars worth of credit card debt, and I and conversely, like you say, there's people out there who don't look affluent at all, and I'm wondering whether that's potentially a sign of people who don't understand money, the fact that they want to look affluent, and therefore it's holding them back in terms of a mindset. Is this something you come across in your day-to-day role, that those who need a bit more coaching on how to manage money a bit better are more inclined to go for the luxury watches and have a car on finance and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think every person is a little bit different, but you can make those generalities, yes, of course, from time to time. But yeah, there's people out there that will that where they haven't come from the wealth of finance where they need to flash and show it. But then there's the people that have come from years and years of money that also feel like they need to do that. So it's really hard to make that generality to say that
Yeah.
that there's that piece. It really comes down to that. To me, it's that personal self-esteem, that ego, to be able to say how much am I confident in who I am, versus caring about what others think about me. And when you can really get to that point to where your values trump what other people think of you, you can do wonderful things with your money. And that's what I love, helping people get to that point.
Yeah, I bet, and that all makes sense. So why real estate and why entrepreneurs? What made you sort of veer into that into that niche?
Yeah. So for myself, when I was working at the big bank institution, my target market was working with people that had money, period. And that was the only qualifier that I really had. What I found is that I was oftentimes working with people that were close to or nearing retirement and having a decent amount saved. But on the flip side, I'd also work with a lot of people who just made some poor choices in their earlier years. So maybe their late 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are moving more towards getting away from the typical 9 to 5 type of culture that we're in right now, and starting their own business and wanting to be a little bit more entrepreneurial. But they don't have the background and the education. So I certainly did it. And I feel like I made a ton of mistakes. And so I'm able to look at my experience, and I always think that there's something to be said about being a few steps ahead of people that you're helping in the journey. And with me, I've moved out on my own, and I have that entrepreneurial spirit. I've worked together in the real estate space, and I've studied a lot for my own personal investments, and I love it, and I really enjoy it. So it's taking what you know and the experiences that you have, and being able to help others along that path.
Yeah, I think that niching down is beneficial within most businesses. Obviously, we do it as a marketing agency. What advice would you have to maybe some newer financial advisors who have got that more generalist approach? Is it something you'd recommend going in niching down sooner rather than later? Is it a case that you'd recommend spending a bit more time learning the craft, getting that generalized knowledge? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to marketing the business, especially, that's when having that niche is really important, because when you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. That's the old adage, and it's so true. But there's different people that will have different problems. A real estate investor is having a very different experience than somebody that is getting ready for their retirement and needing
Mm.
Medicare and distribution planning. So being able to find, what it is that you do love and enjoy is important. I think for younger advisors, some people will try to go off and just instantly start into their craft. And I think it's really important to try to find a mentor as well, who is a few steps ahead of you. So the same way that we're trying to help people in their journey, find an advisor that is a few years ahead of you, that is gone through the work, learn and maybe interview a few of those different people to learn what types of people that they're working together with, and just seeing how that melds together with you, as opposed to randomly throwing a dart at the wall and hoping that that niche is the right thing for you. It's trial and error.
That's it, and let's be honest as well. There's more enjoyment for your vocation if you're actually involved and engaged with a people of who have similar interests, and then they're in the same place as you are in terms of what you find interesting.
Right.
So not just from a marketing point of view, but from an actual enjoyment of from an actual perspective, enjoying your work. I think it's so important.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the marketing angle as well, because I would say that in the marketing world, certainly agencies have realized that niching down is beneficial than being a generalized thing. But I definitely think you're ahead of the curve. Ahead of the curve, whatever the correct
Yeah.
phraseology is, in terms of financial advisors. So, what 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 made you? At what point did you do that? Was it when you went independent? Was it after you went independent? You suddenly just thought, I'm going to pivot.
Yeah. So I think it was after I had gone independent. I was looking at the client base that I was really enjoying working together with. And even more specific within the entrepreneur space, I really love working with smaller service-based businesses. So a lot of times it's working with other people that are creators that either they're in the marketing field or they're not working and dealing with physical products. So they're that creative mindset where they're great with their business, but maybe need a little bit more help with the finance side of things. And then in real
Mm,
estate too, whereas I work together with lots of different people that use real estate in different ways, but I love working with people that have done Airbnbs and that have gone through that process to be able to vet out a few properties and think of it more as an experience as opposed to just a place for people to stay. So creating an investment that is actually more than just an investment. It's kind of like running a small business. So it's just a lot of fun for me to be able to even niche within the niche.
yeah, I can imagine. And so there's a lot of contrasting opinions on real estate. I look on the investing subreddits. I'm engaged in the various investing communities, and there's a big divide when it comes to real estate. On one side of the fence, you got people who say, it's a physical asset you own, no one can take that away from you. But then there's the other side who say that the returns may or may not be as great as if you just put it into a low cost index or tracker and just let your money grow. You don't have to worry about your property, physical damage, all sorts of things. So you've obviously got a strong opinion on this. What would you say in support or defense of one or the other, and why?
Yeah. So I love the idea of people's individuality. Personal finance is personal. You can make really good returns in real estate and you can make really good returns in the equity markets. There is not one way to get to the end goal that we all want, which is having that financial freedom for ourselves. So, but if you are looking at real estate as a whole, many times people are looking at that and you're buying one physical property and trying to make something of that. That's kind of like buying one individual stock and hoping that that can grow, but you do have a little bit more control of it than investing into a company that there's one CEO. There are so many different factors that you have to look at when you're investing into property and running through an analysis. It's not just pulling up the MLS and saying, which is in the US, a place where you can look at um, all of the different real estate options that are on the market and saying, here is a property that I'm going to buy. And I think that this is going to cash flow. You have to actually run the numbers to say, what historically has it done? Is it in the right location? So there's a lot of parameters that you have to look at when you are investing. You can lose your shirt in investing in real estate, but you can also do that if you're haphazardly investing into the market as well. So there's pros and cons between the two. For me personally, I still am very much of that diversified mindset to where, yes, I have real estate investments, but I also have equity exposure. And there's many other pieces that I have as well. Even cash is a short-term investment in today's market. So it's just really thinking through. There's no one size fits all for every single person.
Mm. Okay, so if someone, because I think a lot of people come in with the mentality of, I've got a chunk of money, I can either put it towards equities or I can put it towards real estate. And I think you're right. It can go incredibly well, it can go catastrophically wrong for a number of people. Like, I'm a big follower of a guy in the UK called Rob Moore, and he's
Mm,
got a portfolio of hundreds of millions of pounds, mainly short-term lets and rentals and all that sort of stuff. But he originally his first property was abroad somewhere, and he lost £50,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
So his story is all about I came from negative £50,000 to something great, and I think that, like you say, having an eye on the details and the fundamentals are so important with any investment, really. Even if it is a set and forget low cost ETF, it's,
Right.
what is your why? Is there something that you could be doing? Could you start a business? Is that more in line with your personal goals?
Right.
But tell me about your TikTok, because you talk a lot about your property on TikTok, and some of the content is absolutely phenomenal. And for anyone listening, definitely go and check out the TikTok. Do you want to mention what your handle is?
Yeah. So it's Chris Bowman is the handle that I have. So ITS Chris Bowman. And so yeah, honestly, the TikTok came about more as a way to start kind of marketing the Airbnb that we were looking to build. The story goes is that we were February of 2020, and we closed on some land in Michigan, which we were living in Chicago, so a few hours away, and had this idea of building a house that would be an Airbnb rental. And through that process, I ended up switching and leaving the big bank that I was at and moving to an independent space, and realizing that I had a lot more flexibility. So we moved to the house that was going to be our Airbnb rental, but still really wanted to have that experience. So what we did is we created a ancillary or an accessory dwelling unit, ADU, they call them here in the US, where it's a garage with an apartment above it.
Yep.
And being able to market that space as a getaway for people. My thought process with real estate has evolved a lot over time, to where for everybody's a little bit different, but I think that your home, in most people's primary home, is not necessarily an investment. It is a fixed cost that you have, that you're hoping that you have an appreciation for. But there is a new world where if you have the property and you can make it work, you can make your home somewhat of an investment as well. So we try to design a really neat, unique stay here in Western Michigan that over time is really going to be able to pay for most, if not all, of the property that we have, which is a really neat thing. And we've had the last 3 months as the first 3 months on the market, but knock on wood, it has gone phenomenally well so far.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. So talk more about your TikTok then, because it's a quite an underused platform for financial advisors. And to be honest, I would say the majority of financial advisors, from a marketing perspective, the vast majority rely upon referrals. They sit back in the chair, get referrals, and take it quite easy. So it's quite different to hear someone actively creating content and building that personal brand. And I think it's so important, especially with the new demographic of people up and coming. I remember when I first started working in promoting finance, retail investments in the
Yeah.
UK in 2014. Even between 2014/15 to 2018 and 19, the demographic between those two areas were very, very different. The former, the earlier, were over 50s, more so over 55s, over 60s. They've got liquid cash sat there, but even over the subsequent few years, it might be a sort of robo advising, or maybe crypto, or meme stocks more recently. But
Yeah.
I definitely think the younger demographic are more involved financially, trying to make their own decisions, and utilizing and building your personal brand, so you are present on these platforms, I think is going to be really, really important for people moving forward.
Right.
So I mean, you've got what, 1,500 followers on the platform or something like that, and
Yeah.
each of your videos gets over 1,000 views, which is incredible reach. So how do you do it, and what made you go down that route in the first place?
Yeah. So I think really the creativity of it is a fun piece for me, but there's also that in the financial advising world, I feel like there's so many people that are just really stiff in the way that they're delivering a message. I was classically trained in wearing the suit and tie every single day and showing up in that in that environment. And that's not really who I was. Like if I really was to strip that away. So it's a way to be able to show who I am as a person. Hopefully people can see that approachableness, that it's a lack of judgment that is coming from me when they're working together with me. So there's head knowledge, and I think that's as we start to think through Chat GPT and all of the information is slowly going to become a commodity. But it's really being able to take that information and being able to utilize that for each and every person's situation. So with TikTok, people are able to see who I am, what are the core beliefs that I have, the ways that I think about money and how that can translate to them. Because while the people will oftentimes have a spreadsheet for their financial world, life is not a spreadsheet, and life does not go always according to plan. So having somebody that you can go to and bounce those different ideas that people can see as a little bit more of a creative, out of the box thinker, I feel like is going to be much more of the norm, as opposed to somebody that can say, here's your retirement calculator planned out for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
We think that you're going to do well, which if look 5 years ago, your life is probably extremely different than it was then. So we're moving into that new economy that I think that people need to know on it, that person is going to go through that journey together with them.
I think it's so important, and building that personal brand, to be honest, even if it's on a micro scale, even if you haven't got any followers, even if no one's engaging, you can from an onboarding and a marketing and a retention point of view, it shows that you're actively engaged and you practice what you preach, and they can learn that they can fundamentally understand that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
So like I say, even if you haven't got the followers, even if you're creating this content that's not getting any views, you can still use that in your follow-up. You can still promote your platforms and link to your content, whether it's within your email communication, whatever it may be. And the beauty of this is that it benefits every part of the client onboarding and life cycle. So whether it's someone who's trying to find a financial advisor, they might find you on these platforms, or if they're already in contact with you, just seeing that you're engaged may nudge them over to the line to actually work with you, all the way through to actually having a client. Someone will you build up your rapport, build up your personal brand, build up your personal relationship and all that sort of stuff. But it will absolutely aid retention as well. It gives that person that you're already onboarded with and you've already got that rapport, it demonstrates credibility, and it's more likely that you're gonna retain them for the long run. So I think that there's so many benefits at every stage of the onboarding process. But I think part of the stumbling block is the how. I think a lot of people don't understand that they have the intention of sitting there and going, right, I'm going to create content, and they sit there with their phone or their laptop and they go, I have no idea where to start. And I think that's probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks. I think a lot of people know they should be doing it, they don't know how. So what's your approach to creating this content? How did you start? Was it something you found difficult to start with? Is it something you picked up quite naturally? Are there any sort of tools or systems that you use or anything like that?
Yeah. So in the content creation space, I think that most of us coming from, if we're speaking to financial advisors, especially many financial planners are people that want to have that precision and accuracy, which can lead to that level of perfectionism. And so perfectionism is the enemy. I've had to get over the fact of hearing my own voice. Like I can't stand listening to myself talk at points. But it's when you can kind of get over that and say, okay, now what is the information that I know? I think it's extremely basic, many of the things, but these are pieces that I deal with on a day in and day out basis that other people are not, and they're misinformed, and they hear things and they're not fully accurate on it. So what I've done is I've taken a pillar approach, which some people will do, and focus on my financial advice for entrepreneurs and real estate investors, my own Airbnb, and then incorporating just my philosophies on the psychology of money and how we think about money. So those are my three areas that I like to talk about. And whenever I get inspired, I'll write a piece down in my notes app, and that's really how I've done it: is get that creativity, put it down, and then come back to it when you're feeling a block and look through that notes app, because it's going to be full of information. And the second piece, people tell you all the time as a financial advisor, if you hear a question 2 or 3 times, that means that is something that's interesting to the people that you're trying to message towards. So once you hear that, that's when you create a message on it as well.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's the perfectionism thing, I think, is a big stumbling block, in addition to the not knowing how, or or that side of things. And I'm actually in the process of creating a micro course on to help financial advisors create content. And part of the course is, to be honest, I forgot what I've called it.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I've called it, but fundamentally it's the practice of literally picking up your phone. Don't worry about the background, don't worry about the sound, don't worry about the light, just create something. If you and R or whatever, it doesn't matter. Because any form of content and getting your face and your brand and your voice out there is going to be infinitely better than not doing that at all.
Right.
And on my own LinkedIn, I do this quite a lot, and I'm stammering on and all that sort of stuff. But I thought, it doesn't matter, just get it out there, because at the end of the day, I'm passionate about what I do. So even if there are a few stumbling blocks, I think that the content I provide is valuable.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing. Just it's a case of just do it. And yeah, the demographic of people who are financial advisors, I think you're right, a perfectionist. But yeah, just doing it is better than not.
Yeah, and I would even add to that too. As financial advisors, we talk to people about compounding interest all the time, and the growth that you're going to see. And I think a lot of people expect that they're going to create this one video, they'll put it up online, and it's going to go mega viral. All these new clients are going to come in, and then crickets, and they don't hear anything at all. And they think, oh, I must be a failure in this. No, not at all. It's that consistency over time. And then eventually you'll start to see that hockey stick go up. And it's through those repetitions, you get better as a person. You make information that can relate. You start to see what people are responding to, what they're not responding to, things that you thought were interesting, maybe the audience isn't connecting with. So it's that trial and error, and over time, that compounding interest will really level off. For me, it was watching my wife, where I'm a very big perfectionist. She started a food blog with one of her friends, and she's the type where she is not a perfectionist at all. And like many times she would put different things up, and I would look at it and I'd be like, oh, you could do this and you could do that. And she would tell me, well, you're telling me all the things that I could do, but I'm putting it out there and I'm putting it out to the world. And you go over to Instagram now, and 6 months later, has built 16,000 followers that she's built up on that page. And it's like her mantra is that, it's not about perfection. It's about just the consistency, which she inspires me. So, so her page, healthierhomemade.co, is what she's doing over there. But it's
I was just about to ask.
Yeah, but it's great to be able to watch her. And for me, it's having that inspiration. And honestly, when she's filming hers, it makes me want to get out there and do it myself. So having that accountability partner as well.
Absolutely. And any form of marketing that revolves around branding, or whether it's SEO or something like that, any channel that's what we would call in marketing non-direct response,
Yep.
any brand building thing, it's you're not going to see trajectories straight away, and you're going to have to go through that pain of just doing it consistently to see results. Because like you say, it's not a linear thing. You're not going to see results straight away.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about LinkedIn is the fact that you can see how many people viewed your content.
Right.
And even if people haven't engaged, just seeing 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 people have seen your message, it goes a long way. I remember there was, I can't remember what it was. There was a SaaS company that was producing some really good content. And I was just continuously seeing their brand, and I can't, like I say, I can't remember what the product was,
Yeah.
but it was that repetition of seeing that brand and that message. It made me go, oh, sorry, I got a mosquito in my face.
No, you're fine.
That made me go, I'd never engaged with them, I'd never replied with them, interacted with them in any way, shape, or form. But through that consistent visibility of their brand, I took the plunge and bought from them.
Right.
And like I say, I think the biggest thing is not get disheartened. Don't worry about it. And there's free tools out there like ChatGPT where you can just go on, and it's so easy to create ideas for content.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so marketing wise, how else? What other things do you do? How do you predominantly find clients? Do you rely on referrals a lot? Do you do any paid marketing? What else? Anything locally like classifieds or whatever it may be. What
Yeah.
else is it that you do?
So at this point, I have a base of clients that I've been able to build up through the years of doing what I've done. And with making the transition to go more of this independent route, I've slowly started the organic marketing piece. And that is one driver of new business and new business that I'm having. Referrals from existing clients. When you treat clients well, over time, that's going to be something that draws it all back to you. But the other piece that I have done, just looking to build within the community that I'm in right now, I've made it a point to, on a weekly basis, connect with centers of influence, but just good people that are in the area. And when you meet with good people, you have good conversations, and typically they're connected to good people as well. So it's a combination approach, and I'm not just going out trying to throw out organic only, or just doing referrals, or just doing that. It's an evolving approach over time. And at this point, I've become a bit pickier with the type of client that I'm trying to bring on board. And that to me is a liberating feeling, when every time that I'm meeting together with somebody isn't necessarily me trying to pitch them the services that I have. It's me trying to make sure that we're the right fit for each other. And if I'm not the right fit, being able to point them in the right direction and leaving them better off than when we initiated the conversation.
Yeah, amazing. So just to switch subjects a
Yeah.
minute, you've got a really interesting approach on money and happiness. There was a particular post that I saw that you'd created. I can't remember the exact ethos behind it. Do you remember what I'm talking? Do you recognize what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So I think it's the idea of many times I talk about Viktor Frankl. So Viktor Frankl
That's the one.
was a psychologist, had gone through some of the most horrible conditions when he was in a concentration camp. But the idea is for him that you're creating, you're looking at life circumstances and what has happened to you, and we can't control what has happened to us. And one of his biggest tenets is being able to go through adversity and come out on the other side to be able to tell the narrative through that adversity that we've gone through. So for me, it's so important. We can't control what's happened to us in the past, but we can we can rely on that story going forward that we're telling ourselves. So to me, that's always been super important.
Sorry, I muted myself there.
No, good.
What was what was the person's name again?
So that's Viktor Frankl, and that's Man's Search for Meaning is the book that a lot of people know him from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And he was a Holocaust survivor.
So he was a Holocaust survivor who was, had a whole kind of philosophy that he had built called the logotherapy. And so honestly, most of his work was destroyed and had to recreate it. But he's the type of person that went through the process of losing his entire family and that whole process. And how do we still find meaning in the life that we have? So one of the ways is through our vocation. The second way is through the people that we love. And the third is through the adversity that we have, the struggles that we have in life, like how we respond to that after the fact. So you look at that, from the vocation side of things, regardless of what you do, finding some way to find meaning and purpose behind that. Um, I don't care if you're doing what I do and teaching people on their finances, all the way to you're working in a factory, being able to find some of the joy and purpose and meaning in what you're doing. Um, so it's more of that mindset as opposed to listening to just the facts of your life.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult for I'm 35, so I haven't got as much experience in this world as other people, but even from what I'm seeing, it definitely feels like certainly the younger demographic are struggling mentally. Seeing a productive future. There's so much about the climate, about the economy, about all sorts of things. We're bombarded in the media by all sorts of negative things. The cost of living more recently, and I think it's so difficult for people to find to feel excited about the future. And
Right.
I think it's really, really sad. And sort of tying it back to finance, I suppose, if your if your sole focus is making sure that you are trying to do what you can to stay mentally fit, then maybe a secondary thing is your finance and your long-term goals and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think it's really, really sad. What are your thoughts on that? Is this something you're finding that younger people are struggling um, to think further ahead
Yeah.
compared to maybe some of the older demographic that you speak to?
Yeah. And I mean, I think I see that a lot. And what I feel like is really a big contributor of that is the idea of taking agency of your own life. So I'm a big believer in the economy and what's going on, the recessions that we hear and we talk about. Um, that's on a macro level, but your individual experience through life, we have a lot more agency and control than we give ourselves credit for. So it's that daily commitment to yourself to say, no, I'm going to show up every single day, even when things aren't easy, even when they're tough, and I'm going to be working towards those different goals. So scrapping away, not looking at yourself as a victim of your story. So if you look at yourself as a victim, you're going to experience victimhood in every circumstance that happens. But if you change that around and using narrative and talking about different characters, and if you're not the victim, what if you play the hero in your story and you're overcoming? Any story that you ever hear is talking about a person that's gone through challenge and adversity that then overcomes. Focus on your life as being more of that hero as opposed to the victim that never makes it out of the tough circumstances that they're in.
I completely agree, and to be quite frank, it's the difficult situations that separate where you are currently and where you could be moving forward.
Right.
It's those difficult times, whether it's financially, mentally, in your relationships or something like that. It's that grit and determination that propels you forward and sets you to the next step, because it's a muscle it's muscle memory. When you work out, and by no means am I the best at this. It's something that I'm still learning myself. But once you build up that muscle memory of going, okay, once I focus on that problem and try and overcome it, then that overcoming of future problems becomes a lot easier. And I
Absolutely.
think you're right. I think a lot of it does come down to feeling sorry for yourself, feeling like you're a victim, and I can see why people do, but it's so damaging to your future prospects and to your ability to get out of that in the first place. Um, and I think going back to what you were saying at the start of the conversation, the whole side hustle thing and people starting up their own companies or trying to become YouTubers or content creators or whatever it is,
Right.
there's there's so much more emphasis on people trying to get out of that, and probably more so since COVID. They've realised that there's no job security
Yeah.
in a job, and I think it's a combination of things where people have gone, I need to build something for myself. I need to get rid
Right.
of, I need to get out of that environment. But so yeah, there's definitely a growing demographic, a growing demographic of people doing that, trying to look after themselves, and I think it's great.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. So yeah, I love when people, again, that taking ownership of your life and finding a skill that can provide value to others that you can happen to monetize. And we're living in an age to where, just like you said before with TikTok, creating a video on my phone that can be seen by hundreds and hundreds of people. Um, those are the people that you, before you'd have to go around in those individual conversations or going around the world to speak to people to be able to get that type of reach. We're in a world
Yeah.
where we can connect with the world's population. So I think there's never been a better time to be able to start at a low cost manner, your own type of business or your own entrepreneurial side hustle, if you'll call it that.
Yeah, I think so. So you've got some again, moving subjects. You've got some really interesting thoughts on financial advisors being salespeople for the products that they want to push you into.
Yeah.
Could you explain a bit more about this? Because I'm probably bastardizing what you're what you're what you're saying, but yeah, could you elaborate on that? Because you've
Yeah.
got some really interesting thoughts.
Well, if you look at the statistics, the financial services industry is historically one of the least trusted industries that's out there. And many times it's because people feel like they're being sold different products that they don't necessarily need or want. And so even coming from the group that I was originally with, the large bank, the large enterprise, um, uh, love the people that I worked together with, but there was an experience that I had where I had a client that was coming in, and one of the other, let's call them financial advisors, looked at me and said, "So what are you going to pitch this client today?" And I had never met this client before. So the idea of pitching a client any type of product before I had ever met them just really rubbed me the wrong way. And as the more and more I started looking around, I realized that we were more of an asset gathering shop that gave financial advice only based upon the outcome to be able to sell a product or solution. So if you're only giving advice that steers people towards an investment solution, are you really giving advice or are you giving a sales presentation?
Mm,
And my view is that the world that we're going to now is that people want a distinction between the advice they're getting and paying for the advice and for the products that they're paying. So when I had moved away from that organization, I really wanted to focus on working with an entrepreneur real estate group that historically may not invest a lot of money together with a financial advisor because they're investing it back into themselves right now.
mm,
And so giving them a
yep.
way for them to pay a flat fee that they can pay for the advice that they have. If they want to invest together with me, there's a lot of different options. One, they can invest on their own. And if they love doing their own picking of individual funds, they can do that and they can still work together with me. We do have a platform where people can also invest in a method that we have where we can go more of an index type of an approach, but we can strip away different factors or industries that people don't necessarily fundamentally agree with. But it's separation between those two. It's not if you talk to me, you have to invest in our products.
Yeah.
And so that's really where I come down to is I think that we need to move more towards that transparency of how are people getting paid, because people meet with a financial advisor. Financial advisor is a very broadly and loosely held term that sometimes can feel more like a sales presentation as opposed to true unbiased advice.
Yeah, I think this is I think a lot of it is a hangover to what has always been. I think a lot
Yeah.
of financial advisors, probably shooting myself in the foot here, but fuck it, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think set in their ways.
Yes.
Um, you know, everything what's happened before is the best way, and I think a lot of what's happened previously is opaque. I don't think people up until recently have had a huge amount of visibility on, to be honest, any part of the financial planning or management side of things. Yes, they might give you reports on what they're doing and all that sort of stuff, but I definitely think that's, like I said before, that's definitely changed with the new demographic that's coming through. People understand and want to learn about why they're investing in certain things, what's
Right.
best for them. So I think it's a natural part of the the industry that people are going to have to adapt to that form of um, support that they give their clients, because otherwise, I think people will go to someone who can cater that. But I
Exactly.
definitely think that not just in terms of the not just in terms of the advice side of things, but in terms of marketing, in terms of all facets of the role. I think it is a bit set in stone, a bit set in their ways, and I think those who don't adapt will suffer. And I think there'll be a new wave of younger advisors who are coming through, who are just going to snap up business because the other people haven't adapted.
Right.
And I mean, case in point, there's a young guy that we're speaking to at the moment. He's 28, and he contacted us for our services, and we said, so, what is it you need help with? And he said that he's got his assets under management. He's got a decent amount because he's inherited a load. But
Mm-hmm.
what he really wants to do is build out his personal brand.
Mm.
And I was taken back because I'd not heard that before. And he's got a videographer, he's got a YouTube person. I said, look, if that's the case, we can help you with a podcast. He said, I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of modernization of marketing and strategy that's going to propel those younger people forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, we're moving to a new generation. We started with um, access to the investment world was what the financial advisor's job was. It was back in the 80s and 90s where you had to work with an advisor to be able to transact to buy the stocks. It was a lack of access. Where over time we're getting to, you can open up your phone and within three to 5 minutes have access to being able to purchase the investment products. But we're still stuck in the ways of only being able to provide value on that piece. So yeah, moving towards that point to where, yes, where it's all about the personal brand and developing that so that your clients can know that the value that you're providing is much more than just the investments. I think it's the direction we're going.
Absolutely. And here's a question for you. Do
Mhm.
you think that the days of solely relying upon referrals will start to dwindle? It's something that I've been talking about internally with our team, whether there's going to be a shift towards the age of people relying upon referrals, whether that's going to dwindle. It'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that people always will talk about the things that are extraordinary to them. So for me, very much of that approach of anytime that I come across a product that I really like and enjoy or a service, I'm an evangelizer of that to other people. So I don't necessarily think that that's going to go away. Um, what I do feel is that there's maybe more of that apprehension that some people will have to share a financial advisor with a friend, just because it is that industry norm. What I've seen a lot more of is people coming across my different content, if we're connected in different places, sharing that piece of information. Hey, I saw this video, thought that this would be interesting to you. And that's that warm entry into that person can do their own research before receiving a cold call from you. So I think that even if there are those referral pieces, even if that wasn't a message that was sent to them for a specific video, they're going to be checking you out. They're going to be pulling you up on Google to
Mm.
say, who is this person? What are they about? What do they believe? And if they can't find anything about you, it's going to be hard for them to say, let's make the jump to meet this person, because they're for every person like you that isn't doing it, there are 100 people out there that are getting out there and putting their brand out there.
That's a really interesting point. So the referral thing still exists, but there's now a level of due diligence that people will perform before they actually engage. That's a really, really interesting thought, and you're absolutely right. So having a not just a website, but a website that actually looks decent. It doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing with all sorts of functionality, but just something that looks professional.
Yeah.
A Google My Business presence, a social platform of some sort with some sort of continuous messaging. It's all these soft touches that I think are so important, and I've never really thought about their impact on the referral thing, but it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's the world that we're living in today. It's trust but verify. And the verification comes from doing a quick Google search on folks.
Cool. Chris, I think that's probably all we've got time for today. But before we go, do you want to do a pitch about yourself? Let people know how you can find out about you. What do you do? This is your time.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, again, appreciate you taking the time for us to meet together. If people want to follow along with what I'm doing over on TikTok, just like we said, it's Chris Bowman. But you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Just searching Chris Bowman CFP. Additionally, if you want to check out our website to learn a little bit more on how we work together with our clients, my website is chrisbowman.life, and that'll take you right to my page where you can contact and set up an appointment if it makes sense. So again, Ryan, appreciate it. Thanks for all you're doing.
Chris, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Success Files. Don't forget to take our free financial business health check at theonlinegrowthco.com/health check to identify growth opportunities in your practice. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate and review the show. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unlocking your full potential. This is the Success Files, signing off.